Hello, I just thought I would recap a bit of my week because I realised somebody's messaging me right now and it's a distracting message and it's somebody that needs to do what they're told. when I give them advice, they should just do it. That's one of my major flaws. Telling people exactly what they should do and getting annoyed when they don't do it. That's one of the penalties of being a friend of mine. You get told a lot of what to do. Yeah, but what I was going to talk about before that distracted me was, just about like my week. Because the thing is, when you kind of qualify as, or when you start a business in general, I guess, you're supposed to have a niche, or niche, whatever you want to call it. You're supposed to kind of have a speciality. And this was kind of drilled into us, at the time of qualifying as an RTT practitioner. Even if you're going to treat a lot of things, start with a niche, build from there. And I totally get that. I totally understand the necessity for it. But I kind of really was struggling with that idea. Because when I was training, and I've probably said it before I tackled the kind of modules that were about non-smoking sessions and weight loss sessions, I thought, I don't really, like the idea of doing something that was a targeted non-smoking package or a targeted weight loss package and was talking about food and this being bad for you and that being bad for you and smoking killing you and smoking doing this to you. I was like, I don't really think that's going to appeal to me to do. But then when we came to do the modules, it actually, when you use RTT with somebody, you will always find something traumatic or a link back there between why you might be smoking and either something that was pleasurable or not pleasurable or made you feel inclusive, whatever it is. Or weight, weight is often this protective device. Women in particular will often pack on weight as a protective device if some kind of sexual trauma or sexual incident has happened. So it can often be a safety measure. So I learned quite quickly that you can't form opinions ahead of time about what might come out in this work. Sometimes smoking is a simple thing. It's just your peers were doing it at a certain time and it seemed like the thing to do. You might have had mothers and fathers that didn't smoke, so they didn't really come down on you like a ton of bricks and say, don't do that, because it was just normal in the family, whatever it is. So, but a lot of the times there is some trauma back there. There's a loss or a need to find a sense of belonging because you didn't have that maybe, or maybe it was an excuse to step outside when you lived in a traumatic environment, whatever it is. So yes, I quickly learned that you can't make these snap assumptions about things, and that kind of really more confused me over the idea of niching, because I thought, well, I don't really want to cut myself off from the idea of doing my best to help anybody that came to me. And what's actually happened sometimes in my experience in starting this professionally is that sometimes the people that come to me haven't been offered help elsewhere, or it hasn't been available, or something hasn't worked, and it's quite an unusual situation, and they've kind of wound up with me. And if I said no, then kind of who were they going to go to? And that's not me bigging myself up, it's just a literal fact that has happened a couple of times. So I've always been a bit wary of niching and just settling for doing lack of self-esteem or lack of self-worth, which is quite one of the easier things to do in a way, because that's usually just a story you've been telling yourself for too long based off of something in childhood. But so I was just going to talk about this last week because it's been, talk about not niching or what you think is not niching. Because I've done like smoking sessions this week, I've done OCD sessions this week, I've done like skin irritation session this week. Checked in with my insomnia client, who was a volunteer session that I did as part of some coursework. And the first time, she got some little bit of results, and then, it had kind of gone a little bit backwards. But when we checked in yesterday, so after only having 2 sessions of this treatment that takes less than an hour, she's already sleeping much better, and in the hopes that that will increase as well. There'll be more nights of proper sleep, because it is definitely different. And this is like after having insomnia for 20 years, 20 plus years. And you see, things like insomnia, people kind of tend to write that off if you don't know a bit about it. You might think, what's that about? But insomnia can be that in the past you had a real need for hypervigilance. It wasn't really safe to sleep, or you had to be the one that was on guard all the time and watch your back. You couldn't ever completely shut off during the day, so it didn't feel safe to shut down at night. There could have been real reasons why that wasn't a safe thing to do, real traumatic reasons, where your body or your mind felt like it was critical to staying alive, to not fully sleep through the night, so that the slightest sound or whatever could wake you up, could alert you, and that leads to long-term problems. You get in these cycles, and once you know what you mean, you can easily set a new cycle in your mind at any time. You wake up once or twice in the night and decide to check your phone or check the TV or whatever. That soon becomes a repeating pattern. So yeah, it's been quite an unusual and diverse week this week. And the thing about what I'm trying to establish here with you is that all of these different things can all stem from a very similar place. It's often about trauma or something that happened to you in childhood, or buttoning down your feelings and suppressing a lot of things, or feeling like you weren't wanted or you weren't included, or you had to be alert for some kind of reason, or to remind you about something. OCD can come into your life for all kinds of reasons. And again, it can sometimes be some form of sexual trauma. If somebody has traumatized your body in some way and made you feel unclean, this is when you can get into your habits of, frequent hand washing or checking things, and, showering in a specific way and washing your body in a certain order and things like that. Or it can be down to a safety thing, where at one time in your life you forgot one thing that kind of led to some kind of incident that made you feel unsafe. You can get really stuck in a pattern of checking things for safety. It's been interesting while I've been up here. There's a lot of people, there's been several people that have come into my sphere that have had fears of sickness or illness, and have been worried about passing that on to the children. But kind of where I find this idea of niching hard is that in the clients that I've had come to me, they're often stemming from similar things. So it's like you are at heart, in a way, treating the same things over and over, but just that are presenting in a different way. Your mind will choose to present it in a way that feels right to you, that makes sense to your subconscious mind. So yeah, I kind of really have not managed to knuckle down on this idea of niching yet, because that's what I'm saying, is it just seems to come from the same place. So you tell me how I decide to niche, because I've done such a wide range of diverse things up here, and it often has stemmed back to something being as a form of protection, or something being said to you when you were a young child at exactly the right moment or wrong moment, however you want to define it, that's caused a specific chain of thoughts and beliefs that have happened in your head that have caught you in cycles of OCD, or made you kind of stop cleaning or stop looking after yourself. And to make yourself kind of hidden or undesirable and all of those things, it makes such sense to your mind. Is if you looked attractive in your youth and something really, really negative happened to you, or you were the target of something or other, it makes a great deal of sense to your mind to make you unappealing. For a lot of men that are carrying weight, it's that childhood thing of being caught in a situation where the answer to it would have been if you were bigger or taller or stronger or whatever. Somebody wouldn't have been able to push you around, whatever it is. But your mind, I've said it before, your mind hears that thing of I need to be bigger, or if only I was bigger. And it will often interpret that as putting weight on, not making you bigger and taller and stronger, but just making you bigger in general, or less easy to push around, because there's more weight on you that's stabilizing you to the ground, whatever it is. So yes, I'm still working on this idea of niching. It does make it harder from a marketing point of view, because I'm very aware that when I talk on a wide range of things or about what I've helped with lately, is that people might be thinking, well, what do I go to her with? What specifically does she do? And the answer is, it's trauma, really. It boils down to trauma. I work with you on whatever has been traumatizing you, and that can show up in any number of kind of ways, really. And like I say, sometimes the smoking things are just simply smoking. But smoking is a very different one, I would say, from almost everything else. It's very different in the way we tackle it. It's different in the way it presents, for the most part. I was saying the other day over my client that I did for smoking, it was like all of her memories were like happy ones. It's like, that's not the norm for me. That's not my niche. If you put it that way, it's like to go back and all the scenes be happy. It's not what most of my clients come to me with. So it's always quite amusing, or bemusing to me, when clients just have happy memories. The most of my clients go back to scenes in childhood where they felt less than, or where they felt like they needed protection, or where they felt under threat, or where they didn't belong, or they weren't heard, they weren't seen, their opinion didn't matter, they were overruled. As children, we're just expected to just get on and suck it up in a lot of ways. This thing of, when you change schools, that was a big one for me. Changing schools will flag up any flaws in the family dynamic, because it's a stressful and traumatic thing for a child, especially if maybe they're the new kid altogether, or they've moved to a school where most of their friend circle is not there. And that was kind of the thing for my client yesterday. She'd moved around a lot in childhood, and there was a lot of just being put where she had to go. You don't get a lot of choice as a kid when you think about it. You're very much at the whim of what's going on in the adults' lives around you, and we're often not given credit for what we've had to deal with. And that was a very difficult thing for me, because it highlighted, for me as a child, when I moved to high school at 12 years old, was that I kind of felt like I'd been handling my upbringing on my own and self-supporting, and I kind of hit 12. And I'd had a little wobble a couple of years earlier, but I was in the same school and I got over it. But at 12, I didn't have that stability, and there was a big thing in me that said, I don't know how to do this on my own anymore. I'm not getting the emotional support I need, and it's only getting worse. It's only getting more difficult. So I kind of have to make a scene. And that wasn't happening in my conscious mind. That was happening in my subconscious mind. I had no idea that was going on. And that is what tends to happen. Your subconscious mind will start recognising your patterns, recognising what your triggers are. It knows what you're dealing with. So it's always working overtime to come up with something that's going to solve that for you. And it will often be in terms of creating a calamity for you, making you hyper vigilant, making your skin break out, making you gain a drastic amount of weight or lose a drastic amount of weight, or giving you bulimia, or giving you anorexia, or any one of a number of things. But the important thing to recognise is that there's something lacking back there that is making you feel insecure, or making you feel neglected, or making you feel unseen, unheard, unsafe. And your mind will go to work to kind of find ways to rectify that. And it won't always make sense to you, and it will often hurt you, but its intention was never to hurt you. So I guess my niche, if you want to call it a niche, and maybe one day down the line I will properly niche, but at this point in time, while ever I think I can handle a particular client, I've never come across one yet that I thought I can't bring something to offer there. You know, I've never hit a client yet where I've thought this isn't for me to handle and I'll pass it along. If I felt like that, I would definitely pass it along to somebody who was specialising in something like that, but it hasn't come into my sphere yet because a lot of the things that I get to deal with are things that I've experienced for myself, so I've got some knowledge of how it affected me, so I'm kind of open to whatever is going on in the client's mind. I've kind of got like a little bit of a wavelength in that sense, but you can never prejudge. You can never take it from your perspective and think, well, I know how I handled it and what it felt like to me, because it will always be different from somebody else, but it will give you that benefit of being open-minded to whatever might come up and not judge and things like that, because I think it's very valuable as a practitioner if you've failed a lot in your own life, or what was perceived as failure at the time. And I've certainly got a lot of that, and certainly managed to sort most of it out for myself and find my own self-compassion and self-worth and things like that. But yeah, if you're wondering what I deal with specifically in terms of an issue, it's anything that might relate back to you experiencing some kind of trauma in childhood. And for some clients, they won't even have a clue that they did experience trauma in childhood. It's like I said before, a lot of people come and they say, oh yeah, my childhood was great and we had everything we needed and it was this, it was that, and my dad worked hard and, you know, mum was at home, or, you know, and you get them in hypnosis and it's like almost a whole other story, because we're so conditioned to do this thing of sucking it up as a child and, you know, to do what we're told, to be grateful what we have, to not ask for what we need, not expect things, not ask for things that cost money, even if they're like crucial, critical things that we need. We do, you know, especially if you're of a certain generation, I think you do a lot of doing without as a child and making do and being compared to your peers, and a lot of that, and that can cause you issues down the line in all sorts of ways. You know, skin irritation. If your skin is irritated or inflamed, there's something in your mind that is irritated and inflamed, or something that you're frustrated about, or you feel oppressed or suppressed, and it has to come out somewhere. And that's where it can be. So it's not very easy to talk about niching and what I feel like my role is. It does boil down to trauma. And like I say, you might not even know you have trauma, but we'll find out that in hypnosis for you and we can deal with it. So I hope that was a little bit interesting, and I'll see you later.